Hi scholars, today we are going to discuss evolution in action. In particular, we're going to look at antibiotic resistance, which is a current issue in today's medical field. First, let's learn a little bit about bacteria. Bacterial cells are pretty simple. They are composed of a capsule. Most bacterial cells have a capsule, which is the outer covering. Just inside the capsule there is a cell wall, and just inside the cell wall is another layer called the plasma membrane. So they have several layers of protection to cover their insides. Inside is a jelly-like substance called the cytoplasm, which is found in most types of cells, bacterial cells, animal cells, and plant cells. But what's different about bacterial cells is that they do not have a nucleus. So there's no nucleus in here. This blob of what looks like worms is the bacterial cell's DNA. So their DNA just kind of floats around inside the cell, not inside a nucleus. Here are some pictures over here of some bacterial cells under a microscope and in 3D. So again, there's the DNA in the center, and these are microscope views of bacterial cells up close. Now we need to watch the video link to kind of get a better understanding of the whole good versus bad bacteria. We always assume that bacteria are bad and they're bad for us and that we need to get rid of them, but that's not always the case. There are some bacteria that are actually helpful to humans and organisms, and we actually need them around. So let's take a look.
Hi, my name is Mary Poffenrock, and I'm an adjunct professor of biology. I want to talk about good bacteria versus bad bacteria. Aren't all bacteria bad? Isn't that why we have our instant hand sanitizer always at the ready to kill that 99.9% of germs? Absolutely not. In fact, if all the bacteria on the planet were to disappear today, all of the other organisms, the plants, the animals, the fungi, including us, would cease to exist. We need bacteria. For humans, bacteria help to aid in digestion, to produce vitamins, as well as to keep us healthy. And for the ecosystems, bacteria help to recycle nutrients and are an essential part of every healthy ecosystem. So what is a bacteria? Well, a bacteria is a prokaryotic organism, which means that this single-celled prokaryotic organism does not have their DNA located in an organelle, like a nucleus. But even though the majority of bacteria are completely harmless to humans, there are some of those critters that are harmful, and we call them pathogens. Pathogenic bacteria make humans sick by excreting a toxin. Either it's an exotoxin or an endotoxin. Exotoxin is a toxin excreted outside of the cell. An endotoxin is going to be a protein toxin that's found on the outside of the membrane of the cell. Now, our best defense against pathogenic bacteria are antibiotics. However, our overuse and inappropriate use of antibiotics and antimicrobials is causing some bacteria to become resistant. So next time you reach for that instant hand sanitizer, think about the impact that your choices have on the health of your environment as well as yourself.
Alright, so now that we understand a little bit more about the difference between good and bad bacteria, let's continue our discussion. Bad bacteria, the ones that cause disease, and they were referred to as pathogen or pathogenic bacteria in the video, are usually dangerous for humans and organisms. There's a list of bad bacterial types here on this slide and a description of what they do or the type of diseases or infections they cause. Some of these you may be familiar with, like for example Escherichia coli, or E. coli, you've probably heard it referred to. That's the one that comes from fecal matter. This is the reason why we need to wash our hands after we use the restroom. Streptococcus pyogenes is a bacterial pathogen that can cause strep throat, You're familiar with strep. That's in the beginning of the word there. And then salmonella, you're probably also familiar with, coming from uncooked food. And also salmonella typhi, which comes from, causes typhoid fever, which is kind of an old disease that doesn't really occur too much now, but still deadly nonetheless. There's also good bacteria, which they mentioned in the video. Several of these bacteria are listed here. Lactobacillus, which helps aid in digestion of dairy products. Bacillus subtilis, which is used and is found in the environment around us, and it doesn't really harm us, but can be turned into pathogenic substance when used inappropriately. And there are some others listed here that help with the environment or our bodies. So now let's talk about antibiotics, which are the medical or medicine treatments for bacterial pathogens. Most of you have taken antibiotics before when you've been sick or gone to the doctor and he's told you you have a bacterial infection, a sinus infection, a respiratory infection of some sort. Let's talk about what antibiotics are. Antibiotics are and what they are not. First off, antibiotics are not effective against every type of bacteria. So they do not work against every type of bacteria. There are some bacteria cells on which antibiotics are not effective. Antibiotics are not used to treat viruses. If you have a viral infection, chances are you will not be given an antibiotic, and your doctor will just simply tell you to wait for your body to fight it off, and they'll give you medicines to treat the symptoms of whatever it is you have. Antibiotics are used to fight off certain bacteria, the key word there. They do treat a variety of illnesses. They are toxic only to certain bacteria, and they only kill a limited number of bacteria. So kind of some do's and don'ts about antibiotics. Okay, so now we're going to talk about, or actually you're going to watch a couple of video clips that deal with antibiotic resistance and what it is, and also a video clip about the World Health Organization and what they say about antibiotic resistance and the potential problems it could cause for disease control.
What if I told you there were trillions of tiny bacteria all around you? It's true. Microorganisms called bacteria were some of the first life forms to appear on Earth. Though they consist of only a single cell, their total biomass is greater than that of all plants and animals combined. And they live virtually everywhere. On the ground, in the water, on your kitchen table, on your skin, even inside you. Don't reach for the panic button just yet. Although you have 10 times more bacterial cells inside you than your body has human cells, many of these bacteria are harmless or even beneficial, helping digestion and immunity. But there are a few bad apples that can cause harmful infections, from minor inconveniences to deadly epidemics. Fortunately, there are amazing medicines designed to fight bacterial infections. Synthesized from chemicals or occurring naturally in things like mold, these antibiotics kill or neutralize bacteria by interrupting cell wall synthesis or interfering with vital processes like protein synthesis, all while leaving human cells unharmed. The deployment of antibiotics over the course of the 20th century has rendered many previously dangerous diseases easily treatable. But today, more and more of our antibiotics are becoming less effective. Did something go wrong to make them stop working? The problem is not with the antibiotics, but the bacteria they were made to fight, and the reason lies in Darwin's theory of natural selection. Just like any other organisms, individual bacteria can undergo random mutations. Many of these mutations are harmful or useless, But every now and then, one comes along that gives its organism an edge in survival. And for a bacterium, a mutation making it resistant to a certain antibiotic gives quite the edge. As the non-resistant bacteria are killed off, which happens especially quickly in antibiotic-rich environments like hospitals, there is more room and resources for the resistant ones to thrive, passing along only the mutated genes that help them do so. Reproduction isn't the only way to do this. Some can release their DNA upon death to be picked up by other bacteria, while others use a method called conjugation, connecting through pili to share their genes. Over time, the resistant genes proliferate, creating entire strains of resistant superbacteria. So how much time do we have before these superbugs take over? Well, in some bacteria, it's already happened. For instance, some strands of Staphylococcus aureus, which causes everything from skin infections to pneumonia and sepsis, have developed into MRSA, becoming resistant to beta-lactam antibiotics like penicillin, methicillin, and oxacillin. Thanks to a gene that replaces the protein beta-lactams normally target and bind to, MRSA can keep making its cell walls unimpeded. Other superbacteria, like Salmonella, even sometimes produce enzymes like beta-lactamase that break down antibiotic attackers before they can do any damage. And E. coli, a diverse group of bacteria that contains strains that cause diarrhea and kidney failure, can prevent the function of antibiotics like quinolones by actively booting any invaders that manage to enter the cell. But there is good news. Scientists are working to stay one step ahead of the bacteria, and although development of new antibiotics has slowed in recent years, the World Health Organization has made it a priority to develop novel treatments. Other scientists are investigating alternate solutions, such as phage therapy or using vaccines to prevent infections. Most importantly, curbing the excessive and unnecessary use of antibiotics, such as for minor infections that can resolve on their own, as well as changing medical practice to prevent hospital infections, can have a major impact by keeping more non-resistant bacteria alive as competition for resistant strains. In the war against superbacteria, de-escalation may sometimes work better than an evolutionary arms race.
Scientists are warning that a growing resistance to antibiotics poses a major global threat to public health. In the first worldwide survey of the problem, the World Health Organization found, for example, high rates of drug-resistant E. coli bacteria, which causes problems such as meningitis, infections of the skin, blood, and kidneys.
This is not a regional phenomenon. This is not a phenomenon occurring in just poor countries or developing countries, or in rich countries or developed countries. This is something which is occurring in all countries in the world.
Researchers warned of a post-antibiotic era where people die from simple infections that have been treatable for decades if nothing is done.
The two main dangers actually is the use and overuse of antibiotics in food factory and in animals production, especially the fact that we use antibiotics as growth factors since ages in US and all over the world. It has been restricted in Europe since 2001. And the second one is the overuse in human health.
The answer, a more responsible prescribing and use of antibiotics by both doctors and patients, better hygiene, and the use of vaccinations to reduce the need for drugs in the first place.